to make an entrance.
Looks like the tunnel collapsed. But you should be right underneath the world of waffles.
Great. There should be more biocide in there.
Yes, Weston, I know, that's why we're here. We established this in the previous video, in the previous level. The whole reason we're here is to get more biocide. Don't say that like we've forgotten somehow. Anyway, welcome to the World of Waffles levels, where nuanced writing and atmosphere go to die. They should put that on the sign. This is bar none my least favorite set of levels in the game, and it's not because the game design is bad per se, it's because the atmosphere and writing just take such a hard dip downward. It's impressively bad compared to how carefully crafted the rest of the game's writing and atmosphere is. It doesn't help that this is a level I lost the footage for, and when I recorded it, this is the re-recording you're seeing here, and when I re-recorded it, the nunchuck decided to stop working at random points. Don't worry, I cut out most of those error screens. Anyway, it's the return of the chickens that we saw at the farm, and using our nimble monkey bone quickly gets rid of them.
Waffles, tasty waffles with lots of syrup. Why are we, here?
Back in the 1970s, the military cut a deal with Louis the Llama Carboni, who the mascot is named for, to provide them with a delivery system for their biocide. When mixed with carbohydrates, they form a barrier that is stronger than titanium.
Let's not bore them with the details.
Stopped paying attention when he said back?
These platforms are pedestrian at best.
Okay, game, you're seriously starting to concern me here. I think you might have some sort of genuine mental disorder. In case you forgot, let me remind you, Smith and Weston were not the ones who knew about World of Waffles or the secret government facility. That was Seep. It was Seep's idea to come here. Seep was the one who knew about the biocide. Smith and Weston didn't know anything about it, or the treaty that was signed with World of Waffles. That was all Seep. Smith and Weston literally exhibited no knowledge about this before. Stop retconning things.
Hiya, kids! Put a smile on your face. It's your hunger that we want to erase. Everyone has a good time at World of Waffles. For our vegetarian friends, we have puppy-flavored waffles, dipped in the blood of a newborn doe, flown in from France.
So it's not just the writing, but the general atmosphere for this set of levels can also go fuck itself.
If you don't smile soon, you will hurt Louie's feelings.
Remember the more subtle atmosphere of previous levels, and how it didn't feel like Death Jr. was being all try-hard? I kinda miss that. Like, what the hell even is this gaudy bullshit? It's so obnoxious and in your face and doesn't fit at all with the rest of the atmosphere the game presents. In general, the atmospheres the levels have are, you know, subtle, nuanced. This is just a fever dream. The sky is a hazy purple color, the clouds are floating waffles, there's holes in the walls everywhere, everything's multicolored and kind of vomit-inducing. And there's an annoying animatronic mascot that keeps saying things that are supposed to be funny but are really just irritating because it reminds you how weird the writing just got all of a sudden. But enough about that. For this section, I'd like to come behind the counter and slowly bait the enemies into coming back here with me, because fighting them out in the open is a lot more difficult. It's much easier to shoot them after they round this corner. I'm also being very conservative with our twin pistol ammo, because 10 enemies is a lot to fight. There's a single enemy left, and it's one of those teddy bears with drills on their arms, and they are surprisingly difficult. They take a lot of hits from our scythe, and unless I'm absolutely forced to fight them, I generally just jump over them. The reason we're fighting them now is because we had to.
Don't forget to try our barbecued llama crepes. Also try our mango and whipped cream waffles, now with 100% more diabetes. You better smile, or you'll piss me off!
I can actually feel my hands kind of vibrating in frustration at how incredibly obnoxious and completely devoid of any self-awareness this writing is. It's like the writers spontaneously remembered a really trippy cartoon they kind of liked and then decided they would copy it, but only on a surface level. And as a result, all the dialogue, the atmosphere, and everything about it is just so superficial and boring and needlessly try-hard. Isn't it funny that the animatronic children's mascot said the word piss? Why aren't you laughing? I mean, sure, this location is colorful and it's obvious a lot of work went into creating so many varied locations, but it's just all generic, super trippy shit now. There's nothing subtle here for me to appreciate or comment on. This level and the next one also fly completely in the face of what the Death Jr. games seem to be about. In the other Death Jr. game and the Death Jr. comics, it's heavily implied that the world they live in is mostly normal, and they're just a bunch of oddball kids who happen into supernatural shenanigans. Everything in the atmosphere, in the universe that we've seen up until this point is justifiable in the narrative. We haven't seen anything up until World of Waffles that is starkly out of place in the world of Death Jr. And then you get to World of Waffles and you're like, what the hell is this shit? This is a fucking restaurant, right? What is all this nonsense? People go here to eat shit. And it's just World of Waffles, too. None of the other levels go this far off the deep end. If Death Jr. wanted to be a crazy, surrealist, Adult Swim-esque masterpiece of bullshit, trippy visuals, that's fine, but that's clearly not what they're going for. It's just like in this one level, they spontaneously decided to change the entire tone of their game. And as a result, all that's happening here is I'm being reminded of better media that does this much better than Death Jr., and does it in a much less superficial fashion. This collar just doesn't suit you, Death Jr. Go back to being subtle, but weird. That fits you much better. You don't have the chops to handle this kind of thing, and it doesn't fit with your style. So now we're in the ball pit area of the World of Waffles, which for some reason the ball pit is deadly. Fuck if I know. But anyway, there's a bunch of moving platforms, and the moving platforms are supposed to obstruct our view of the targets, thus making the targets harder to hit. But our twin pistols have such a spray of bullets that we can hit the targets easily without even stepping on the platforms in the first place, thus rendering this entire challenge completely null. But hey, they tried to create something kind of interesting in this room, challenge-wise. As for the toxic ball pit, that's just more try-hard surrealist bullshit, and I wish it would stop. Also, instead of the background music being these really cool atmospheric guitar strings, it's just, like, weird carnival music. Like, yeah, I get it, the level's supposed to be super trippy. I understand. It's funny. Animatronics are wacky and spooky, and it's funny because it's a fun place for children, but it's not, because the ball pit is toxic, and the llama mascot says piss, and here's a giant fucking pinball table. Why is there a giant pinball table? Who the hell knows? And even though there's no narrative reason for the pinball table to be here, at least the gameplay involved in the pinball table is relatively decent. The goal is to run around the pinball table and hit all of the glowing targets with our scythe while avoiding the pinballs, which will explode. You may remember those rolling heads that exploded back in the toy cemetery. The pinballs are a version of that, it's just that there's more of them and they seem to keep spawning. You can see how many targets we have left to hit by looking at these green lights up here. I missed one. All in all, this room is reasonably challenging and fun, it's just the atmosphere is still shitty. It's trying way too hard.
Everyone has a good time at World of Waffles.
This room has a bunch of displays that open up and fire projectiles at you, and the projectiles hurt a lot, so I recommend cutting around the corners as much as possible. If this were a racetrack, I would basically be saying stick to the inside of the track. That's what we're doing here. This room always depresses me because it's obvious they put so much effort into these set pieces, but they just don't fucking fit. These puppets are a new enemy type, but they're relatively weak and we can easily run right past them, as I just demonstrated. You can also knock them off the tops of these, what would you call these dioramas. You can easily knock them down using the particularly small ham, but I would really recommend avoiding them instead. That's the easiest way to deal with them. We've actually been avoiding enemies a lot in this location, if you couldn't tell.
I wish I was with you. Nothing helps the brain function like hot, off-the-grill waffles.
I concur, dear brother. 3 waffles covered in blueberry syrup would hit the spot.
Waffles.
I think the waffles are watching us.
I can't eat them. I am allergic to wheat and people.
There's a party in my mouth. Come join the fun.
So here's the big battle of this location. We have 2 snipers up there and this new mule enemy type. This mule enemy type catches its head on fire and then charges at us. It's got quite the charge too. Homes in on us, so it's best to circle strafe and fire. Trying melee attacks, not advisable. After we deal with the first set of mules, a second set of mules appears, and these ones fire lasers out of their eyes. We're gonna come up here where the sniper was located, which will make it more difficult for these to use their laser eyes properly. Also makes it easier to knock them off the cliff. And now the third wave appears, which is mechanical dogs. The mechanical dogs, as was previously established, are weak to our nimble monkey bone, so that's what we're going to use to fight them. Or that's what I would like to say, except in the middle of this fight, my nunchuck starts to malfunction, and so does the Wiimote, which leaves DJ in a constant state of trying to use the safety first, for no apparent reason, and while it looks humorous, I can assure you it was quite frustrating. So anyway, after I eventually got that sorted out, we just walk back up to the mechanical dogs and start using the nimble monkey bone. They're so weak to it, it's almost humorous. And that's practically the end of the first World of Waffles level, thankfully. It feels a lot longer than it is, at least to me.
We will bake your livers in the next batch of strawberry flambe waffles.
See, it's dialogue like that that I just feel so fucking embarrassed for the developers for this level, for the dialogue they wrote for Louie. The entire World of Waffles location is just so fucking... I usually don't criticize things for being edgy, because edgy usually means emotional. It means you have something to say, but this is just so surface level, try-hard, surreal. It's so boring.
Babies taste better with syrup.
I thought ovens were the friends of children.
Giant ovens and floating frying pans. Where exactly are you?
I'm currently in bad writing hell right now, and if you would like to point me to the nearest exit, I would gladly leave just any fucking time. Anyway, in this next room is another spider robot enemy, and it's very similar to the spider toy, the mini-boss that we saw a couple of times in the toy cemetery. The only difference seems to be that it gets up faster. It has a very similar moveset.
Sweet and saucy, with a mild pinch of cannibalism in chocolate sauce.
Could you please fuck off with that? I'm trying to be professional and with my criticisms here, but this is just fucking embarrassing. That's embarrassing shit, and when I show this game to people, they have to see this shit.
Babies taste better with syrup.
You were so proud of that line you had to use it twice, huh? Once just wasn't enough. You took two takes of that line, had to use them both. Couldn't do without it. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, this is actually the level where I stopped to consider whether playing the rest of this game was worth it. And that's saying something, because I loved this game up until the World of Waffle levels, and the World of Waffle levels don't have bad game design or anything. But the writing and atmosphere for these levels made me seriously question, is this worth it? Because what Death Jr. tried to do for these two levels reminds me of better media, with more artistic integrity that has more deep things to say. This is way above Death Jr.'s level. This is not Death Jr.'s style. This isn't where Death Jr. belongs. It's not good enough for this.
Ugh, llama nuggets look gross when you jump on them. I will never eat another nugget.
You know what llama nuggets are, right?
Llama nuggets are people!
And that line in particular, ladies and gentlemen, was the straw that broke the camel's back. That was the point at which I stopped, and I had to seriously sit and think to myself, is this worth it? Should I even be playing this right now? It may not be worth it anymore. And you know, there are reasons this isn't working. It's not that I just don't like the style. I love the style, but it's doing the style wrong. It's not doing it justice. You know, I brought up Invader Zim very briefly in the introductory video for this Let's Play, but let's go back to that for a moment. Let's talk about the differences between Invader Zim and these two levels in Death Jr. Why Invader Zim's brand of bullshit surrealism works and Death Jr.'s does not. Because even though their surrealism is very similar on a surface level, there are two main differences. The first difference is that Invader Zim has shit to say. It has shit to say about human obliviousness, about hubris, the human condition, the way humans observe reality, and it uses its surrealism as a vehicle for those philosophies. The show has a lot of commentary about society as a whole and uses dark humor to achieve that commentary. One of the biggest running gags in the series is that it doesn't matter how competent, intelligent, or, you know, right you are. What matters is your arbitrary physical attributes and status. That's a running gag that appears frequently in the series in both the Urkin Society and Human Society, drawing parallels between them, some subtle and some not so subtle. But it has a purpose, it has shit to say. Does Death Jr. have shit to say?
Everything is so huge.
Now I know what a cockroach feels like.
The biocide levels are extremely high here. You need to get back outside and into the fresh air as quickly as possible.
But don't forget the biocide.
Can't you think about their safety for 1 minute?
That's the only thing I'm concerned about. That's why we have to stop Fury. I just hope she's still out there.
So that's the first big difference between Invader Zim and Death Jr. in a nutshell. Invader Zim uses its surrealism and absurdism as a vehicle for its philosophies and its commentary on society. Death Jr. uses its surrealism and absurdism for, jack shit. It's just here, for no apparent reason. And now on to the second big difference. Invader Zim has a straight man. A straight man is an important function in absurdist comedy. It's the anchor which keeps you drawn into the universe. In Invader Zim, there is a single, solitary, sane individual who tries to bring perspective to everybody else, and that sane individual, ironically, is the conspiracy theorist Dib. Every other human around Dib is either completely oblivious to danger or apathetic toward it. And most of Invader Zim, most of that series is Dib trying to teach people how to observe the world better, trying to bring perspective into their lives and show them that there is danger lurking right in front of their eyes, and they refuse to acknowledge it. He's the straight man, the anchor that keeps people from dissociating from the show.
I'll never be a real Reaper.
DJ, are you totally dim?
My dad's such an old man. He doesn't trust me with anything.
DJ, you have the coolest dad in the world.
But in the World of Waffle levels and Death Jr., there is no straight man and the surrealism has nothing to say. It's just bland, soulless. And that dialogue exchange back there about DJ wanting to be a real Reaper, that was terrible shit. Like, imagine if you had a friend who is concerned that they couldn't live up to their dad's expectations. Just imagine that for a second. Your friend says, "I'll never be as good as my dad. He never trusts me with anything." And then your friend responded with, "Your dad's so cool." What the fuck kind of conversation is that? And this is the middle part of the game too. We're like smack dab in the center of the game. This is the middle third. This is the worst place for the writing and the atmosphere to be hitting such a huge slump.
Our readings indicate that Fury has already infiltrated the world of waffles and bent the lovable mascot Louie to her cause,
Which means you have to take him out with extreme prejudice.
providing us with a perfect opportunity to test the biocide on a grand scale.
Okay, how?
We're still working out the details.
And I suppose there's one last thing I should mention. If you take the World of Waffles levels completely out of context from the rest of the game, pretend they're not part of the Death Jr. universe at all, is the visual spectacle enough to justify everything? Well, no. You know, sure, it's kinda trippy and colorful, but this isn't King Star King we're talking about here. I'm sure a lot of effort went into creating these set pieces, but they're not nearly trippy enough to justify trippy for the sake of trippy. On a writing and atmospheric level, I don't think this could fail much harder. And even though the gameplay is fine, it's so hard to appreciate when most of what I'm here for is the atmosphere. Even the writing that isn't specifically linked to this location, like the conversation about DJ wanting to be a Reaper, even that is terribly handled. There's also the incredible continuity errors that I brought up early on in the video. We haven't heard from Seep once in this entire location. You figure Seep would have a ton of one-liners and snarky things to say about the World of Waffles. We've barely heard a peep out of the guy, and it was his idea to come here. God damn, this sucks. We're almost done, though. This is the last room. And there's a lot of clever and good writing past all this shit, you know? After we get out of this shithole, things can go back to being good.
Oh, my head hurts now.
We've been analyzing the area and have isolated a tactical advantage in the World of Waffles parking lot. Stigmatha will place the biocide launcher in good positions for firing.
Dead Guppy has volunteered to act as bait for the trap. Get there, load the biocide launcher, wait for your opportunity, and blammo! A smoking evil husk!
All right, we've analyzed the threat. It seems that Louie is encased in an ultra-hard fullerite hide that can only be damaged by his own caustic saliva.
Those trucks look like the perfect vehicle to catch his loogie and hurl it back at him.
You guys are just making this up, right? You've got to be kidding.
Everyone has fun at World of Waffles.
So to go with the theme of the World of Waffles levels being the worst, this is also the worst boss battle. We just pulled the switches on all three trucks. Shut up. We just pulled the switches on all three... Shut up! We just pulled the switches on all three trucks and then fire at Louie.
Hey, guys! Guys!
Hurry back! Oh, they're everywhere!
Hey, what's going on?
We can't hold them off. They've come through the wall.
Back to the sawmill, quick!
I just grew that! I don't have time for this!